But he only had a little mob of breeders, say 40 or 50, 60 breeders, but they were beautiful cattle. They mightn't have been as big and robust as Morris's because they were never fed as well. Harold, or Skinner, always seemed to know just how much grass in the winter time it kept to keep a beast alive. He knew the difference between it dying and living. And of course in the springtime, well, that stunts the growth. But the quality of the cattle, he got the very best of bulls from Gippsland, from, oh look, I can't tell you where it was in Gippsland, but he'd go away and buy, and he used to buy stock towards the finish. He used to buy stock for Bob Cleasy, and he used to do the buying for Bill Outram at Hotspur, who was a big fattener. So I mean, anybody that could buy for those fellas, it didn't matter how they carried on, they knew their stock, because Cleasy was a noted stock buyer. Like, he didn't buy any rubbish of any kind. But I saw a sale in Haywood here, and I was talking to Jimmy O'Halloran afterwards, and these lovely pen of roan bally steers came in, and they were knocked down to Harold, and another pen of good steers come in, and they were knocked down to Harold. And I said to Jim after the sale, I said, you referred to him as Skinner, what's Skinner up to with those sort of cattle? He said, they're not his, they're Bob Cleasy's. He was buying them for Bob Cleasy, but they were put out in his name, you see. So that'll touch on that one.
What about dealers and rogues? There must have been some shonky deals go on, was there?
Oh, well, yes, those dealers. My father, he used to get dealing. I don't think he made a cent out of it, probably lost a lot, but that was his thing. But there was another fellow from over around Koroit, Port Fairy, Killarney there. No, his name will come to me shortly. He used to just follow around the sales and, you know, argue about, much the same as a lot of them there now. You know, they're all mouth and that sort of thing. Probably as big a dealers that were ever around here in my time would have been Bullocks and Hamilton. Bullock and Allen were in partnership. I think Allen was a brother-in-law to Keith Bullock, I suppose it was. They bought a lot of cattle. You know, go to a sale and buy 100 here today and 100 tomorrow. Where their outlet was, I don't know where they sold, whether they trucked to Melbourne or locally. I think Bullock bought, a lot of those buyers would be getting $1 a head, $2, $5 a head to buy for somebody. Bullocks knew they knew their stock, you know, and they knew where to place them apparently. But a few arguments around the sale yards, disputed bids, that was my bid and that sort of thing and so forth, etc. But then they were put up to be bid on again. And before every sale, I don't know whether it's now or not, they used to read out the rules of sale. It was like a few pages out of the Bible, what you could do and what you couldn't do and so forth, etc. But that sale day, that was a big day for everybody concerned. The brother Ross and I, we had Fink's country at Heathmere East, and we had our farm each year at Drumborg, and we had a fair few cattle. And there was a drought. What year I cannot remember. It was a very dry year in New South Wales. It was a long time ago, back 60s perhaps, 70s. We went to Newmarket with Jim O'Halloran and bought quite a lot of cattle. I think it could have been 2 semi-loads. I think the Wilson boys carted them, as I remember rightly, and it was flagged. Most of the old stockyards in Newmarket were bluestone flagged, but there were some dirt yards. Now, cattle to stand after they'd been trucked from New South Wales and that, and long distances and been there overnight, and that they were very, very footsore, get very footsore, and it used to knock the condition of stock to the devil. So this old chap, Sam, somebody, an old stockman, yardman, stockman there, he used to wear his stock whip wrapped round like a snake round from the shoulder down. And I give him, as I remember, £10, fair bit of money. And I think in that he was going to give them a bale of hay. I'm sure he was going to give them a bale of hay. And whether they went into we stopped until to see them go in to this big yard. Whether they stopped there, somebody else might have offered more. But it was, well I remember on that instance, if I'm not boring you, there was a pen of, they turned out to be Red Devon, which is a breed of shorthorn, very, so a big curl on the forehead, hairy round the horns. They were big, poor, they'd been, I suppose they would have been 2.5, 3-year-old, poor. There was about 8 of them. And I said to Jim, he was the agent, I said to Jim, we'll buy those bullocks. Oh, he said, you'll never fatten them. They were very quiet. They must have come off a small property. Pretty poor. Oh, I said, yeah, but if they go cheap enough. So they went, I don't know what it'd be, 15, 20 pounds. Bought them, and Jim wasn't too keen on it, but he used to talk about it afterwards. He thought that I'd made an awful blunder there. Not that I'm skiting myself up, but I wanted these bullocks, you see. So I brought them home, and they went to Heathmere, into a good little paddock at Heathmere. And the dad was alive then, and he was an old bullock driver. And this is bringing a little bit of wit into it, but anyway, he come down and he spotted these, and he identified them as Red Devon. Big red fellas, and they'd started to do well, and they were quiet. You'd nearly pat them. They were nearly pets. Well, he said they'd make a beautiful team, and he wanted right or wrong to break them in. Well, they grew. I suppose we kept them the best part of 12 months, and we brought them in to the yards here in Hayward. They topped the market, of course, and Jim O'Halloran always spoke about it, that my judgment was better than his. But it was the fact again that they were really quiet cattle, and look, any of the cattle breeders about now, Fred Wilson, all them sort of fellas, they'll tell you that the quiet beast is always the best beast. He's easy to handle, and he'll fatten quicker and rear better calves. So yeah. that was Newmarket, but on Newmarket there was a lot of stock brought into this district out of Newmarket, a lot of good stock, but it was only drought areas that put them on the market really.
What do you remember of Teeny Keeler?
Teeny Keeler, I've heard. I never had a great deal to do with Teeny. I can see him looking through the rails at the sales, the little fella. But they say he was a wonderful stockman, and that I've never ever heard a word said against his ability with stock, handling stock, judgment of stock, and a wonderful bush vet. He was, you know, called right, better than getting a educated vet for any calving trouble with cows or anything. I've seen him castrate a colt. He was noted for it. He just threw him with a colt, marking a colt. There's a special way, the old way of doing it. They plait the legs, start off, they don't tie a knot in a rope, long rope, they put that with loop round his neck, just in front of the shoulders. Around the front leg, one rope round the front leg, inside above the hock, the knee of the back leg, and just shoo him backwards, and it pulls his back legs from underneath him and throws him right on his back. They keep those ropes tight, loop them round the neck, and tie the front, and he's trussed like a turkey, see? And they do their job from behind, the vet or the local man. Teeny Keeler done it like and it was done up in the north, they tell me they do it. They threw them like a bull, one front and back leg. You pull them back and he just had to tip over sideways, then half hitch round the other legs, and he's stretched out like that. I seen him with the colt of Jack McGrath's at Greenwald, and he's doing his job, his operation from the side, and Tony's leaning over that his little feet were off the ground on the other side of the horse. He wouldn't have been 5 feet, would he, Teeny? But he was noted throughout the district as, well, the bush vet, yeah. Ian Ray retired from the bank, was teller in the Bank of New South Wales here in Hayward. A very nice fella, very, very popular fella, an ex-Navy man. He was in the Navy in the Second World War. I would say educated, but fair education anyway, but a very, very popular fella. He left that and he either joined Australian Estates. No, I think he had a little shop first. He had a shop, yes, he did. He had a little shop, he and his wife. And then he went with Australian Estates. And from then on, well, he went places. He was, I think he was a Victorian finance manager or something of Australian Estates.
Regional manager of Australian
You know, a really top bloke. Yeah, it'd have to be spoken straight shooter and knew his job. There was, Australian Estates were big at that time. They had, I think they had a bit of a setback when they had a manager there one time by the name of, well, he was a local bloke, so, but let me put it to you this way, at one time Harold Headage, the late Harold Headage and Reg Headage run the show. They were there for a while, yeah. But they had other good managers. Earl MacDonald. I don't know if he ever got to manager here, but he got to manager in Warrnambool. I think or he joined. He was again out of the bank. But Australian Estates were big in those days. They were by far the biggest estate agents, and they were taken over who by elders, was it? Goffey Thomas. I suppose the longest. I suppose we've got two of the longest reigning. I suppose Jackie Price, bar carting a bit of milk and that as a kid, young fellow. He'd been an sub-agent all his life. And Frankie Hollis. Frankie Hollis was a pretty good judge of stock too. He does a bit of buying for Halliday, so he knows his job. Now the brother Morris, he returned. He saw action in the Second World War. I'll lead it into the picture here. And he had worked, his main job prior to war was working as a stockman for Sam Malseed, Mr. Sam Malseed. And he joined and went to the war, saw action in the Middle East, New Guinea and what have you, and he came back and there were two paddocks, two paddocks at, right at the back of Kentbrook, adjoining, it adjoined Bars. That was a paddock that Malseed had, and there was Suttons and Bilsons, so that was the name of these two paddocks, and they were virtually valueless. They were covered with currant bush and what have you. And adjoining that, Fred Hogan from Portland, who had originated in, he had a clothing store there, drapery. He had a paddock, but Morris, when he got back from the war and things had settled down after the war, Malseed gave him a gift of these two paddocks. He gave him a gift of one paddock of Sutton's, and he gave the brother Tom, he'd been in the army too, he gave him another paddock, that was Bilson's. Now, and then in latter years Morris bought Price's, that was the name of the paddock that Hogan had. He bought that for £4.10 an acre. It was a pretty good paddock, as coat paddocks went. Well, he spent a lot of money on it, Morris. He reclaimed it. He had dozers in and pushed bushes out, and over the years he developed it in and resowed it with grasses, grasses that would grow on the coast. Lucerne, I know he had a big paddock of lucerne. And he had 1,000 acres. And he used to winter his breeders there and others. He'd take them down. It was a fair lead. It would be about the best part of 30 miles. He had a camp out near a dam on the way, halfway down. He'd camp them overnight and drive them on the next day. Now those cows, they went down year after year, and their heifer calves afterwards. This time of the year, or perhaps a bit earlier, they'd turn up one by one at Lower Crawford. They'd come home. They come home in the springtime, shining, you know. Not all of them, but some of the old cows, they'd drift out. If you went along the roads in late August, early September on the road, you'd see an old cow mooching along, perhaps a calf. I think I was mentioning about when the cows Morris's cows would come home from the coast country. They'd be the old cows that he'd bred and been there several times, of course, and he always kept a few of those to lead his herd. And but mind you, he would go back and do a tail end muster. There would be, some, but I couldn't say. It may have taken a week. They'd just drift home through the forest, which was about 30 miles. So if solid walking, it would have been 2 days walking, wouldn't it? So it could have been easily a week. And they come home from there, well, looking beautiful. They clean off, the hair cleaned off them earlier in the year. And now, Morris had I don't think I'm trying to championise Morris. I'm only quoting cold hard fact, and I know the facts with. He had a mare. She was brought out of the Hamilton sale yards, horse yards, almost thoroughbred. She was a beautiful, beautiful looking mare, and a wonderful horse, very, very quick, and was like a quarter horse, cutting stock out and that. Now that mare, when he'd muster the coast country,